Picture this. The year is 1945. World War II is raging. Soldiers are fighting across oceans and continents. And somewhere in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, two guys are staring at a massive pile of wires, metal tubes, and enough electrical cable to wrap around your school 3 times. Their names are John Mauchly and J. Presper Eckert, and they are about to build something the world has never seen before, a computer. Now, before you picture the sleek laptop on your desk or the phone in your pocket, let me stop you right there. Because the computer these two men were building, it was nothing like that. Not even close. But we'll get to that. First, a question. Do you know what the word computer used to mean? A person, that's right. Before machines took the job, a computer was a human being, usually a woman, who sat at a desk doing math. All day, every day, just numbers. Page after page of numbers. So technically, the first computers were people, which is either very flattering to humans or very alarming, depending on how you feel about math homework. So why did the world suddenly need a machine to do math? Well, it all comes down to a very serious wartime problem, one that had nothing to do with secret codes or spy gadgets and everything to do with artillery. See, when the army needed to fire a big cannon, they couldn't just point it at a target and hope for the best. The angle of the cannon, the speed of the wind, the weight of the shell, all of it had to be calculated precisely. Miss by a little and you miss the target entirely. Miss by a lot and, well, let's just say it's a bad day for everyone. These calculations were called firing tables. And each table took a team of human computers weeks to finish by hand, with pencils and lots of erasing. The United States Army needed those tables fast, like yesterday fast. And that's when a physicist named John Mauchly had a wild idea. What if a machine could do all that math? Not in weeks, not in days, not even in hours, in seconds. John Mauchly was a scientist who loved numbers almost as much as he loved big ideas. He had been dreaming of an electronic calculating machine for years, sketching ideas on notepads, rambling about it to anyone who would listen, probably even at dinner parties where people were just trying to enjoy their soup. Then he met J. Presper Eckert, a brilliant young engineer at the University of Pennsylvania who was only in his mid-20s. Eckert was the kind of person who could look at a complicated engineering problem and immediately know how to solve it. Mauchly had the vision. Eckert had the know-how. Together they pitched their idea to the U.S. Army, an electronic numerical integrator and computer, or as it would come to be known, ENIAC. Yes, scientists love a good acronym. It's basically their version of a nickname. The Army said yes. They gave Mauchly and Eckert a budget, a building, and a team. And in 1943, the construction of the most ambitious machine ever attempted began. Now, let's talk about what ENIAC actually looked like, because words almost don't do it justice. But we're going to try. ENIAC was not small, ENIAC was not medium, ENIAC was enormous. It filled an entire room, not a closet, not a classroom, an entire room, about 1,800 square feet. That's roughly the size of a large house. Except instead of a kitchen and a living room and a couple of bedrooms, it was packed wall to wall with wires, panels, cables, and the most important ingredient of all, vacuum tubes, 18,000 of them. If you've never seen a vacuum tube, imagine a small glass light bulb about the size of your fist. Now imagine 18,000 of them, all crammed together, all getting extremely hot, all doing math at the same time. That's ENIAC. And it didn't just take up a lot of space, it took up a lot of weight too. ENIAC weighed 30 tons. 30 tons. That's roughly the weight of 4 adult male elephants, or 20 small cars, or one very, very committed science project. Your laptop, by the way, weighs about 3 pounds. So computing has, shall we say, gone on a diet. ENIAC also had 6,000 individual switches that operators had to flip by hand to program it. 6,000 switches. For context, your TV remote has about 40 buttons, and most of us still can't figure out how to change the input. Now, here's something the history books don't always tell you, and they really should. ENIAC was built to be programmed, but who actually programmed it? 6 women. Their names were Jean Jennings Bartik, Frances Belas Spence, Kay McNulty Mochley Antonelli, Marlon Westkoff Meltzer, Ruth Lichterman Teitelbaum, and Frances Elizabeth Betty Holberton. These women were originally hired as human computers. Remember those? Doing math by hand for the army. But when ENIAC was ready, they were chosen to figure out how to make it actually run. There was no instruction manual, there was no tutorial video, there wasn't even a clear programming language yet. These 6 women had to look at a room full of switches, dials, and cables and figure out, from scratch, how to make it solve problems. And they did. For a long time, their contributions were overlooked. When ENIAC was unveiled to the public, the women in the photographs were assumed to be models posing next to the machine, not the actual programmers who made it work. It took decades for their names to be properly recognized. Today, they are remembered as the ENIAC 6, pioneers of computer programming before computer programming even had a name. On February 14th, 1946, Valentine's Day, which feels very on brand for a machine everyone was about to fall in love with, ENIAC was officially unveiled to the world. Scientists, army generals, and journalists crowded into the building at the University of Pennsylvania. Everyone held their breath. Someone flipped the switch, and the lights in the building went dim. No, seriously. ENIAC used so much electricity, about 150 kilowatts, that it literally dimmed the lights in parts of Philadelphia when it powered on. Legend has it that people in the city noticed the lights flicker and wondered what on earth was happening. What was happening was history. ENIAC ran its first public demonstration, calculating artillery firing tables at a speed that made everyone's jaws hit the floor. It could perform 5,000 additions per second. 5,000. A human computer doing the same work by hand would have taken days. ENIAC did it before you could finish saying, "That's impossible." The crowd went absolutely wild. Well, as wild as scientists and army generals go, which mostly means a lot of very enthusiastic nodding and handshaking. Now, no story about the early days of computing is complete without mentioning bugs. Not software bugs. We'll get to those. We're talking about actual, real, living bugs, insects, the kind with wings. In 1947, just a year after ENIAC's big debut, a different early computer called the Mark II, also at Harvard University, stopped working. The engineers went investigating. They opened up the machine, peered inside at all the circuits and relays, and found a moth. An actual moth had flown into the machine and gotten stuck in a relay, causing the whole thing to malfunction. The engineers carefully removed the moth, taped it into their logbook, and wrote next to it, "First actual case of bug being found." And that is how the word bug, meaning a problem in a computer, was born. Well, sort of. The word had been used loosely before, but this was its most famous moment. That moth is still preserved at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., and to this day. So the next time your computer freezes and someone says it's just a bug, you can nod wisely and say, "Yes. Once upon a time, that was very, very literally true." So, a machine the size of a house, weighing as much as 4 elephants, powered by 18,000 glowing glass tubes. What could it actually do? ENIAC could solve complex mathematical equations at extraordinary speed. It calculated firing tables for cannons. It helped scientists work on early nuclear research. It ran weather prediction calculations. It even helped with early code-breaking work. What it could not do is equally interesting. It couldn't store a program in its memory the way computers do today. Every time you wanted it to solve a different problem, you had to physically rewire it. Unplugging cables, flipping thousands of switches, rerouting connections. This could take days. It also couldn't send emails, browse the internet, play video games, or help you cheat on your spelling test. Just throwing that out there. ENIAC ran until 1955, about 9 years, before it was finally switched off for the last time. In those 9 years, it helped change everything we thought was possible. After ENIAC came more computers, smaller ones, faster ones, computers that could store programs in memory, computers that used transistors instead of vacuum tubes, much smaller, much more efficient, much less likely to set your building on fire. In the 1970s, the personal computer arrived. Now, regular people, not just scientists and the military, could have a computer in their home. In the 1980s, they started fitting in on a desk. By the 1990s, they fit in a backpack. By the 2000s, they fit in your hand. Today, the phone in your pocket is millions of times more powerful than ENIAC. It weighs a few ounces, it runs on a tiny battery, and it fits in your jeans. ENIAC weighed 60,000 pounds and needed its own dedicated power supply from the city of Philadelphia. Progress, people. Progress. Here's the thing about ENIAC that's easy to miss when you're busy marveling at its enormous, ridiculous, magnificent size. It worked. In a world where the idea of a machine that could think, or at least calculate, faster than a human being seemed like pure science fiction. John Mauchly, J. Presper Eckert, the ENIAC 6, and hundreds of others proved that it was not only possible but real. They built something that had never been built before. They solved problems no one had solved before. They wrote programs for a machine before programming even had a rulebook. Every app you open, every website you visit, every video you watch, every game you play, all of it traces its roots back to a room in Philadelphia in 1945, where two men looked at a mountain of vacuum tubes and wires and said, "Yeah, we can make this work." And they did.